Hello, friends, and welcome to Pathologic, Volume 2, Episode 9, where today we are going to be looking at a Slitherlink puzzle. This is a genre that I know quite well and have been playing them for years now, and we actually focused on this in one of the episodes of the Chatter newsletter in the past, so we've gone through a bunch of these if you would like to look at those in the archives. But just in case this is new to you, we will start off by taking a look at the rules. Slitherlink is a loop drawing puzzle. We will connect some pairs of orthogonally adjacent dots to form a single non-intersecting loop. So orthogonally is saying horizontally or vertically. We don't go diagonally between dots, and non-intersecting meaning that we can't have the loop cross each other and make knots. It's a single, simple loop. Clues represent the number of edges drawn surrounding the clue, up to 4. So this 0 is telling us that none of the 4 potential edges here are drawn in the answer, while the 3 shows that there are 3 such edges drawn and 1 is not an edge. That's all the rules there are to Slitherlink, so it's time to solve a puzzle. Today's Slitherlink was set by Tyrgannus. Now, I know some patterns and tricks with this genre, but I will attempt not to jump ahead at all for newer listeners. So we'll start off by doing the obvious thing, which is to look for any zeros in the grid and make sure that we have marked those edges as not containing part of the loop. That is pretty obvious. And then we can also look at corners and edges that have high numbers, because those tend to be pretty helpful, like these 3s in the corner. Supposing that the open edge of the 3 were pointing at one of the walls, then we would end up with a dead end. So whenever we have a 3 in a corner like that, we have to draw edges around the outside of the grid. In addition, I know that anytime we see 2 3s next to each other like this, they always have the 3 lines perpendicular to the orientation of the 3s are always going to be lines. Because if they weren't, let's say this middle one wasn't a line, then we would have a domino that just goes around the 3s, which would be legal if that's all there was in the puzzle. But assuming there are any numbers anywhere else at all, we can't have that orientation. Nor could we have the outside an outside line not there, because then we would have a U shape facing out and there'd be no way to handle the other 3. So anytime we have 2 3s that are orthogonally adjacent, we can draw in the 3 perpendicular lines like so. Another pattern that I see all the time are 3s that are diagonally apart from each other. With these, what we're going to end up knowing is that these lines are drawn in. And let me explain why. Supposing that one of these 3s had a corner drawn right here. If that were the case, the other 3 would have a problem, because neither of these could now be edges, so we'd only be able to draw in at most 2, and we need 3. So we can't have both of these have lines, and since we only have one edge here that isn't filled in, then it's got to be one of these 2 that's missing. These 2 must be filled in, and so by symmetry you can do that on the other side of the 3. We can also look for things in the grid like these two clues that now have a couple edges that are known to be not marked, that leaves only two possibilities for both of these cases. And when you have an edge going into a corner, whether it's an actual corner of the grid or a corner that we've formed by marking a couple of the edges as no's, then there's only one way to come out. Actually, more generally speaking, if a node of the grid is has two x's marked next to it, then either the line doesn't visit that node at all or it goes straight through. And in this case, it has to go straight through because it's coming in. So we can do that on all of these. We can also notice things like this 1, which now has the only edge that it needs filled in. And we can see things like this node has nowhere to go if something were to enter. We could put an X there. And I could continue this way and probably will do some of this, but I also want to make sure to talk about coloring because it can be really helpful in these. So the interface here is built in to allow for coloring by clicking on the center of a cell. What I mean by coloring is marking a cell as being inside the loop or outside the loop, because every cell is going to be one or the other. And if you consider this cell, for example, now that we've drawn a line around the outside, we know that's inside. So we can mark that. And when an inside cell has a line next to it, we know the other one next to it is an outside cell. Now we got a line next to an outside cell, which makes this an inside cell. And the reason that's useful is you can look at an inside cell, see that it is next to the edge of the grid, and know, oh, hey, there has to be a line there. Also, when an inside cell is touching a corner like this, or when any cell of known, we'll call it parity, is touching a corner like this, neither of the two cells around that corner could be a different color, because if they were, we'd have to draw a line touching this corner. So this is another way of saying that we could put an X in both of these places, but I usually find it easier to see if I do the coloring part first and only resort to the X's when I get stuck. The X's is usually how people are initially exposed to a Slitherlink puzzle, but the inside-outside is really handy. So we can do things like that, and now you can see that this has to be a line. What you can also see is that this can't be a line. This is something that's harder to see if you just do the X's. Because if there were a line right here, we'd have an early closed loop. So all of the green cells in this entire, in what we're going to draw here, all of the green cells will need to touch each other, and all of the yellow cells will need to connect to the outside of the grid, which is exactly like the cave puzzle we did recently. So this is going to come out here, and that's going to force a line right here. This is inside. Now, on the other side of a line, we can draw outside cells, and we can use the X's that we penciled in to extend that out without even thinking about it across all these X's. Across a line, again, it's going to be inside, and we can say this is on the same side of that line, so those are all inside. Across the line is going to be outside. Across this line is going to be inside, so therefore there are borders in these places. The borders draw themselves in. This green region needs to get to the rest of the grid, so it's going to go down through here, which is going to give us some more edges. This 2 is complete, so this region has to keep on going. The green has to keep going. There's going to be a line here because it's on the outside of the grid, and it's a green cell, so we need to protect it from the outside. Now we've got the only cell that the only line that we're allowed to have around this one, so this can extend out like that, and the line will go around this corner like so. Now this cell can't be yellow, because if it was yellow, the path would have to go around here, giving us 2 edges, and we only get 1. So this is in fact green. Let's start. I could probably keep going, but I'm going to look for easy stuff first. This green is going to connect to the rest of the world. This is green because there's an edge. Let's see, I'll do that down here too. Crossing a boundary changes the color. Crossing a boundary changes the color. This is on an edge. Crossing the boundary changes the color. And this connects here. This 3 is done. This 3 is done. This 3 is done. This 3 is done. These connect. This has to come down here. The 0 tells us that all of these are green. Okay, this green has to come out here. In fact, is all part of that same green region. The 0 tells us all of these are all green. We draw a line separating our colors. We've got a 2 that only has 2 potential places for edges, so we can draw the edges there, and the other side of that is a different color. And we can connect those to separate the different colors. This has both of its 2 edges, and now we've got a 3 that has a gap on this side, so the other 3 have to be edges. And these have to be green to continue along the wall. This will come up here. This 3 now needs to be outside because that's the only way we're going to get that to all connect. This blue is getting a little hard for me to see, so I'm going to click the Change the Line Colors button, which is very handy. Now, these yellows need to connect to the edge of the grid. The only way they can do that is to come through here. And we've got a 2 here that we can only fill in one way. And now that is right there inside. This has to continue to separate it from the edge of the grid. This 2 needs lines here, and this will need to come down here, which makes this yellow and all of this yellow around here. Now this 1 glue, where could that 1 go? It can't go on the bottom. So we would know from the X's that these 2 are not edges. But this one would be harder to see if we weren't doing the coloring. We know this is outside, so therefore this can never be an edge. So the only possibility is right here. It's going to come around there, and this green needs to come out, and green needs to follow the wall around the outside. We need a 1 right here to separate that. Now the greens need to meet up. And this 3 will be around the outside like so. And that is how you solve a Slitherlink.